Conversation with the superintendent of the Purchase Line School District, Shawn Ford, is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. All right, so is there a big sigh of relief when the school year ends and you get a chance to just sit back and catch your breath?
Yes. This year in particular, yes. there's no sugarcoating that this year. Yes, it is nice. I mean, we're still, we're in the middle of a board meeting for June, which of course we're approving the final budget. So we're not quite, I would say probably more toward the end of the month than right now, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things. When we talk to the school principals who are in the buildings every day and they're dealing with the issues in their particular buildings, when we talk with you, you're sort of in between because you're there in the hallways and meeting with students and teachers all the time, but you're also dealing with school board, you're putting together budgets, you're looking at the other issues involved in the school, and everything comes together. And you have to have a hand in all of it. That's an awful lot to have to deal with, and this past year had more than its share of challenges.
Absolutely. On a typical year without a COVID, interestingly, I came from Crawford Central up in Meadville, which would be similar size to Indiana. And so here the superintendent's role is kind of a crossover, both in the building and both at the district level. But then throwing the COVID in, I went through some notes last night, and I saw that we changed all of our priority goals in May of a year ago, May, to reflect everything that we had to do. So now that we've come out of there, now we have to reset where we were before, but also still keep an eye on where we're going to be here next year. So no, it's been a tremendous challenge for everybody in the district. I often say this, Todd. It's been a big challenge not only for in the district but our community and our parents and all they've gone through and with hybrid schedules and everything. So it's just been a tremendous challenge for everybody. So,
as you looked at that list that you came up with last May and then considered where you are today, were there a bunch of them that you could just check off and say, goal achieved, this one not so much, this one not at all?
The big three on that list we achieved, and that was all, and they were all centered around remote learning, cyber school, one-to-one initiative. So, at this time, a year ago, we still did not have one-to-one devices completely. They were on order. We did not have a cyber school plan in place, a remote learning plan in place. And so that was that was just a tremendous challenge. Plus, we were gearing up for serving meals at that time all summer long. So we were basically coming a food distribution. So those were the big three on my list. And we did achieve those. And so now we're going to build upon those, and we're going to reset. We're actually going to have a board retreat later on in the fall, early fall, to talk and reset our goals and say where do we go now from here based upon the changes that have happened to public education that we think are sustainable changes that are going to stay for a while.
Well, it's interesting the way you phrased those top three priorities, and the first one you mentioned was one that I wanted to talk with you about today. Because every school district, I think, is now coming up with the idea of having their own cyber academy of some sort, a virtual school of some sort, a charter school. The phraseology might be different from school district to school district, but you're doing it there at Purchase Line. And maybe for folks who don't understand why this is so necessary for school districts to do that, you could fill us in on the Red Dragon version of it.
So we basically are coming back to school 5 days a week. So we have two options for folks in our district. You can be in school, normal in-school instruction 5 days a week, or you can be part of the what we call the Red Dragon Cyber Academy. And so the choices, we still need to provide people choices because otherwise, if all those folks would go to a traditional cyber school outside of our district, we're talking millions of dollars. I mean, and it just has a tremendous economic impact if that would happen. And so we have to provide choices, and I believe that's one of the sustainable changes coming out of COVID. Not only do we have, I think you're going to see in the future hybrid-type classes where students will do some in school and they'll do some online, and I think you already saw that at the collegiate level, and I think those options for parents and options for students are going to just increase over time. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about into the future. So that's what it looks like at Purchase Line. We have an option for in-school instruction 5 days a week, or you can be part of the Cyber Academy.
Yeah, if you don't get into that market, that cyber market, but there are plenty of other charter schools out there, and you're going to actually be paying for your students to go somewhere else. And I think that's what people really might not understand about why school districts are forming their own cyber academies. You're going to have to pay one way or the other. You might as well have them go to you. Absolutely,
and it's it's a tremendous cost. I mean, if we took the students that ended the year in our cyber and on what we called remote last year, we're moving away from that term and we're going to call it cyber school. But if we had the students that were in there full time go somewhere else, it would be to the tune, it would be millions of dollars that the district would be paying out to those cyber schools.
Yeah. So that has to be developed. And is it an easy task to develop a cyber academy of that sort? Is there a model, a framework that you follow?
Well, we partner with Waterfront Learning out of Pittsburgh, and they're part of the IU in Pittsburgh. And so what we're utilizing is their platforms. It's an Edgenuity platform at the 7th through 12th, Accelerate platform in K to 6. So we partner with them, and then we also have some of our teachers do some Google Classrooms for the itinerant classes, your gym classes, some of those classes that maybe aren't real good at Edgenuity. So we kind of, that's where we're at right now. So, there's various models out there for sure. We just felt that for us it was going, but we still have our teachers still manage that. We provide time in their schedules to help manage that, and we have a whole system set up for that. And that's what the pandemic provided. We had a year to kind of develop the model, then practice the model, then tweak the model. So this is kind of where we've arrived at it.
It's sort of interesting you say that, because you sort of get the idea that had you not been forced to do things like this, had school districts not been forced to do things like this, it might have taken longer for these things to come together. And the speed with which you were able to do it and to do it correctly is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It's funny, we had just presented to the board in February about proposing a cyber school academy. So this was right before the pandemic hit in March. So we had just initially began those discussions, and so the timing of that was really interesting. And so we had already kind of put together a proposal. We had already kind of reached out and talked to Waterfront and some other vendors. We had them come in and give us options, and so we had begun that work right before the pandemic. And then once we got into it, that's when the speed of the decision making went into overdrive.
Talking with Shawn Ford, he's the superintendent of the Purchase Line School District, and he's joining us this morning as we get just to the other side of the academic year. It's now closed. A few stumbles along the way. Toward the end of the year, you were having more COVID difficulties, I know, than you would have liked to have had, but weathered that storm too. And so you got to be an expert of sorts at contact tracing, I would guess.
Yes, we pretty much had our system, and unfortunately, we had some cases, and we had quarantining. I shared at the graduation speech. I said, in a year full of hybrid schedules, quarantining, contact tracing, I appreciated everyone's cooperation, and it's been a year. But now we have a pretty good system in place, and it's a combination. We have a team that does it, and so we just kind of go about and we just make it happen. But I'm sure parents are going to be glad this summer not to receive any more letters or phone calls from me for the summer.
We hope they don't anyway. As you assess how the kids did through all of this past year, do you find they lag behind where you might normally expect them to be, or are they right up to speed?
We're still, we're still waiting for some end of the year data on that to really check. So we'll check that further into the fall to have a better. I could probably answer that question better in the fall. But I'm very, very proud of our students. They for what they overcame this year, and for talk about flexibility. Talk about a term that our students learned this year is learning to be adaptable and flexible, and switching from hybrid schedules 2 days a week to 4 days a week to 5 days a week, and then closing down. And that's a skill that we keep hearing from our employers in the area, that it's one of the leading skills that employers are looking for, is adaptability and flexibility. And I told our graduates at the graduation, that's an advantage you're going to have because you learn that skill at a young age. And I tend to, Todd, to be a person that looks at the silver lining and everything. And so to me, I'm proud of our students for what they've accomplished this year and what they've gone through.
Yeah, and the classes of 2020 and 2021 had difficult challenges that we hope no other class has to deal with in the future. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Okay, so you mentioned the budget a couple of minutes ago. You're putting that together. Of course, most school districts, they have their preliminary budgets in place. By the end of the month, they'll vote on the spending plan for the coming year. Things looking okay for Purchase Line in terms of finance, in terms of being able to get into the district the type of technology that you want?
Yes, I mean we're working through that right now. It's a tough budget year because of the impact. We're trying to budget not only for this year, but we're also projecting 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, especially with the influx of the money. But we try to stay to our priorities. We know we've got to emphasize certain things within the budget this year. We know we're emphasizing learning loss. We're emphasizing social emotional learning. So those priorities for our students are staying. But we're looking pretty good. We're still working. We're still working through that. We'll have a final one by the end of the month. So. Yeah. And overall, but there's tough decisions to be made. I mean, there's because you're not only planning for this year, but you're also planning for 3 and 4 years when that stimulus money from the federal government, which really was designed to help our current students. So you're trying to plan, and then to project that out it's a difficult projection. I think that's the big challenge here for the current budget. And I think all the boards are going through that. When you look at taxes and you look at those type of things, because sometimes you look at taxes not only this year, but you look at it for 2 and 3 years down the road. And so that's been the difficulty. And Mrs. Romania does an excellent job at that, but that's the challenge right now.
Yeah, it really does become tempting, doesn't it? You see all that federal money coming in, and you say to yourself, "Okay, well, let's go shopping," but you can't do that.
No, you can't do that. We've got to be. I preach balance here, and I always say that everything we want to do, we want to be balanced, and we want to. Even during COVID, we tried to have a balanced approach and look at both sides of every decision. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We're in the process of that right now.
Good stuff. Shawn Ford, thanks so much for visiting with us today. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Todd. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. We'll see you. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.